It's Baxie's musical podcast. Resistance is useless.
You youngsters may have a hard time imagining this, but once upon a time, the whole purpose of MTV was to show music videos. These were like TikToks set to music. Well, better music, and a whole lot of it. And for those of us in the MTV generation, that shit was every bit as addictive as a steaming cup of matcha or a 5-hour energy drink. And while MTV certainly had its share of pointless garbage, especially now, it also provided an indelible soundtrack for an entire generation, myself included. I might not be able to remember anything from high school calculus, but I can recite every line from Mexican Radio or the safety dance by heart. And frankly, I found that to be much more useful. Like today, for example, I'm about to talk to an iconic new wave legend whose biggest hit is one of the most recognizable songs of the 80s. The name of that song was 1981's Johnny Are You Queer? And the woman responsible for it was the legendary Josie Cotton. When Josie released Johnny Are You Queer, it instantly became an MTV new wave classic. This was a song whose hook was arguably one of the most contagious of the entire new wave era. And while the song was certainly controversial at the time, just as it might be today, there's a long and fascinating story behind it, one that involves the guys who wrote it, the Go-Go's, the hardcore band Fear, and a coin toss. There's also a much longer and more fascinating story behind Josie Cotton herself. This is a woman who has released a bunch of albums, including her latest entitled Day of the Gun, on her own Kitten Robot Records. And I mean this in all sincerity. This album is an absolute blast. Even when it's talking about serious subjects, Josie Cotton is going to make you feel good about it. It's an album that's taken about 4 years to complete, and she also got plenty of help with it, too, from people like Clem Burke of Blondie and Lee Rocker from the Stray Cats. And when I tell you that it's great, I am not exaggerating. It is fantastic. And so it's a real treat to talk to the incredible Josie Cotton on Baxie's musical podcast. A couple weeks ago, Ray Roldan, the publicist, sent me a link to the new record, and he says to me, he says, you got to listen to the new Josie Cotton record. It's wild. And he wasn't bullshitting me. I mean, Day of the Gun is so much freaking fun. What a great
Oh,
effort. I loved it. I really did.
thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I know, I mean, I never know what fans I'm going to lose on which record, but but this one, I think I just went into another, place.
Yeah.
So
It's crazy because, I mean, I've listened to your stuff in the last couple of days, and I really think this is like the best thing that you've ever produced. I mean, Painting in Blood is fantastic. Ukrainian Cowboy was great. I love Disco Ball. It sounds like you just took an awful lot of time to make this record right. Is that accurate?
that's accurate. That's accurate. I was putting out the singles, ahead of time. But I really was super like OCD with this. I think I was afraid to finish it. It was to let it out into the world because it was such a departure for me, and it was so intimately like revealing, or I mean, not that I talk about myself in these songs. It's actual like storytelling. I think you could say safely, but it was just a big reveal, and thank you for noticing that. I did put a lot into this record.
It totally shows, and it's got this great campy rockabilly surf B movie vibe to it, which appears to be kind of like your special territory.
Well, I relate to that world because I don't know. I had an affinity since I was a kid with science fiction and horror movies and just and comedy. Like that was what like took me out of my weird childhood. Just being alone in a room with Godzilla was just like so so fantastic thing, and it just never left me. I've just started, I guess, bringing it into my songwriting, which was a departure for me, really. I did the B movie theme song record, but the songwriting was kind of separate. Now I'm now a science fiction horror. Like it was,
It's great the way you've taken the songs and you've mirrored that same you love of B movie and science fiction and applied it
Yeah.
to the videos too, because the videos
Mhm.
really show that passion as
Yeah.
well.
But yeah, well, everything except the only song I didn't write was the Elvis song. And to me it's the most beautiful song. One of the most beautiful I've ever heard. And it was kind of a tribute to my old producers who wrote Johnny Aguirre, the Pain Brothers. They both passed away now, so it's bittersweet because I know they would have loved this. But that's a sincere song. Nothing else is completely sincere. There's a tongue in cheek double entendre, or I'm contradicting what I just said, and I think it's confusing for people, but that's good.
I actually want to ask you about this song because, like you said, it was written by Larson and Bobby,
Bobby, yeah,
and it was supposed to be recorded by Brian Setzer and
yes.
never got there. Why did he pass on that?
Well, he didn't pass. He actually sang it live. Larson wrote it backstage before they were going to do a show together, and he had the the bass of the song, but he didn't have the lyric. He was actually writing it as they were on stage, even, and Brian sang it. I don't know why he didn't do it. Because I don't know, but Larson produced a record with him. I mean, Brian did several of his songs, of Larson's songs, and they were in a band together. So I don't know. That's a mystery to me,
Yeah.
but. I always had it in the back of my mind. Someday I'm going to do that song. I'm going to do that song because I loved it. And so I rearranged it and whatnot. And Larson, he loved the production. And so that made me so happy. He loved it so much, he gave me the publishing on it. So
Wow.
yeah, I think that was to pay me back for He Could Be the One, which I wrote a lot of that and I was never put on the song. I think trying to balance the tables. I don't know.
The
But it worked.
the duet with Kevin Preston makes that song really great, and the fact that you got Lee Rocker to play
Yeah.
stand up bass on it, I think is very cool.
Yeah. I know. I mean, and he's such an astounding musician. He just brought a whole legitimized me basically in the rockabilly world, and in that sense. And then Kevin is such an outstanding singer. I mean, he in moments he sounded like Elvis, and I felt like Wanda Jackson. Or I mean, we were just going into a whole Western kind of thing. And being from Texas, that felt okay. I didn't feel like I was pretending to be that. It's definitely inside me, and comes out once in a while.
And it definitely did sound like a sincere recording. Like I said, it is different than than the rest of the songs, but yet it fits. It doesn't like stand out there like
Right.
it doesn't
It's
belong.
I know, it oddly fits right beside Ukrainian Cowboy, which is like a polka song. But there but there's a Western element to the Western guitars. And so that was funny to me that it fit in the record. I was like, "How on earth am I gonna," it had to be a very specific order for this record to work. I worked on it for months. The order was just like, "This is never gonna work. This is never gonna work." And I think I found the way at the end.
For better or for worse, I was in high school during that sweet spot of the MTV generation. And I remember that's back when
Yeah.
you could actually watch MTV because there's actually something on it worth watching. But in 80
Yes, uh-huh.
in 81, I mean, remember the video for Johnny Are You Queer? And it's like one of those to me it was like one of those generation defining songs in the early 80s. And
Yeah.
I know it's got a fascinating history that people probably don't know about. Again, it's another Payne Brothers song, and it was supposed to be recorded by the Go-Go's, and just
Yeah.
like just like this ballad of Elvis Presley, it falls
Yeah.
into your lap. Tell me the story about that and how you got to record it.
Well, it was a classic Hollywood story. I was in a bank line. I could feel someone like staring at me, smiling, and it was so creepy. And I was just like, "Oh God!" And I'm a naturally shy person, and I try and overcome it. And this time, I felt, just don't be so shy, Josie. Just smile back at this person. He obviously, smiling. He wouldn't stop, in fact. And so I turned around, and that was Larson Payne. And so he carved my phone number into his car with a nail that was on the ground. It was just, because we talked about, I was a singer and all this stuff. It wasn't like a pickup. What I thought we would work together. That was my, and we did, but I had to absolutely plead with them for me to sing that song. I mean, I was a singer and I was a songwriter, but I just thought that was the most hilarious. I have a background in comedy and whatnot, and I had a comedy radio show back in the day in Dallas, and it was just like, that's hilarious, and it's such a great song. And so finally they were making a demo for the song. They parted ways with the Go-Go's. They were producing them, and that was their big live song. That was the song they would do at the end of the night, and they got a lot of notoriety from that. That was like their, it was their moment at the end of the set. And so when they parted ways, the Payne brothers said, "Well, you can't do that song anymore," and that was how they ended. And so they were just had to make a demo for it for their publishing, Warner Brothers. And so I said, I want to sing that demo. And they were going, no, 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 Josie. And I was going, let me just sing it. It's just what harm could it do? It's just a demo. I want to sing it. And then, so finally they let me, and that single became the recording that we used and brought it to Bump Records. And they didn't even, we have a song called Johnny You Queer, and Greg Shaw went, "I'll take it." And he didn't even hear it. So that was pretty funny. And that's how it, initially started and whatnot. So there's many turns and tribulations of that song, but that's the very beginning.
I also read a story about how Larson had maybe based that song loosely on a song by the band Fear, which is like a hardcore band for
Oh
people that
yeah.
don't know, and
Yeah.
based on "Fetch Me One More Beer." And my understanding of this is that once it became a hit for you, Fear wanted to recover some of the publishing rights for the song, and my understanding is that it was decided on based on a coin toss. Is that
It
is that
it
true?
was. It was. That's almost the right storyline. But they had a song called "Johnny Are You Queer," but it was just them yelling the line in the very angry way that Fear has, this charming, like terrifying anger. I was so scared when I first met him, but and they loved the line. It was in it would. I thought that would be a great song, so they altered it tremendously and made it a pop song instead of like a Fear song. And so before I ever, I think I recorded it. I might have recorded it, and they wanted some of the publishing, and they did a coin toss. Okay, I think I said coin toss.
Right.
That's not right. But and so they wanted half the publishing, and the Payne brothers said, "No, let's do it." Bobby Payne said, "Let's do a coin toss, and if we win, we get all the publishing, and if you win, you get all the publishing." And so they lost. They were willing to do the 50-50 split, and Fear did not want to do that. And they said, "Okay, let's do it." And so they lost, and then they wanted to change the deal, and they went, "No, a deal's a deal." So
What a tough
there are some.
year for Fear. They get kicked off of Saturday Night Live and they lose the coin toss all at once.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know about but but I've reconnected with him, and he's changed. He's a changed guy. He's like a professor from Oxford or something now. He's so charming and lovely to see you. And isn't it fantastic how people love the punk rock now? And I was like, are you really him? Because I don't know. I remember him as just being like, whoa, this guy.
I interviewed him, I think it was like last year, leaving, and it was funny because I expected one thing, and I got something totally different.
Yes.
He was. I don't know if he was trying real hard, but he was trying to impress me with how smart he was. I mean, he's a smart guy, but he was like trying really hard because I think he wanted to
Oh,
get past that shadow of a destructive band on Saturday Night Live.
When was that? How long ago was that?
Oh, this it had to be about a year and a half ago. It wasn't
Okay.
that long ago, but yeah,
Wow, they got kicked off. That's incredible.
yeah.
Yeah, they did a record with the Pain Brothers. They never got like released. It was just incredible. I don't know what happened with that either, but yeah. So there's that connection too. But the funny thing is when I what I heard was actually the people that they lifted the line "Johnny, are you queer?" was this blind dude who was the boyfriend of a friend of Fear's, and that they lifted it from this blind dude, and then Fear had it, and then the Pain Brothers, everyone loved that line, "Johnny, are you queer?" It just seemed like zing, like that was the line people wanted, and so
One of the interesting parts about that song, though, is that at the time it was relatively controversial. There were some people that thought it was homophobic. Other people thought it was promoting a gay agenda. I mean, I don't think it
yeah,
was either one of those things, but there was still
yeah.
a backlash. Tell me about what that song created.
Yeah, it was interesting. When we played, people would just be aghast when they heard. They would just be dying laughing. Gay people, I mean, everyone in California we played it for were just going, "Oh my God, that's hilarious!" Or that's, I mean, the kids didn't think anything about that word, and they got the way it was intended, and it was so non confrontive. It was it was such a tongue in cheek. This girl, she was a character to me. She was dumb as a box of rocks. She just couldn't figure it out, and that was part. And to hear that word out of context, so that was lovely. And then I started getting backlash from the press, the local press. They were upset. I don't know why, but it was just, and it ended up me being banned in Amsterdam, and the televangelist coming after me, and the gay community in the East Coast were very sensitive about it. And the cover of Village Voice, I remember the very cover said, "Josie, are you a bitch?" in answer to "Johnny, are you a queer?" And they just reamed me. I mean, they just completely tore me apart limb from limb. But then I would go to LA and it was an anthem, and they would be, protest, for me, and people would come up to me crying, "Thank you so much for writing." I didn't write the song, but they thought I did. And for that song, it changed my life. It's how I told my parents I was gay. It's how I realized I was gay. I still hear that, like older guys, obviously, but they're crying like to me, like, "Thank you." So that's but it's so funny to me now is that all the politically correct talk and speak and double speak, and like you can't say a lot of words now. You can't say gay. You're not supposed to say gay or homosexual, but queer is the only word that survived. I've talked to it, like that has been embraced, and it's like they own the word, and it makes me feel wonderful. I mean, I feel like I played a small part in making that word belong to the right people. And some interviewers have asked me, well, what if that song had not come out, and do you think it would have the same effect? And I really do think that that song had to be at that exact moment in time, because the new wave and punk was very androgynous. There was a whole mentality of changing, mores, and I mean, it could have been anyone. My dog could have sung it, like I just, it didn't have to be me, but it was me. And so I think that if that song had not come out, I don't know if queer would be universally used now. I think it was like it just slipped under the radar. And I mean, I took a lot of heat. I mean, believe me, I paid dearly for doing that song. But I think it's in the vernacular now, and I feel proud of that.
I was finding myself asking, what would be the reaction to that song if it had come out today? Obviously, it's all in hindsight. There's no way to tell, but I mean, you've got
Yeah,
people shooting up cases of Bud Light because of their belief systems about gender and sexuality and all kinds of
yeah.
things. And it's just interesting to me, like, would that have been as shocking today as it was back then, or might it have been even worse now?
It might have been worse, but the thing that was so beautiful about that song, the strange thing about Johnny, Are You Queer is that, I mean, I remember being in shows and for Johnny Knoxville, I did this show at his birthday party, and there were skinheads, and then there were, punk rock. There were all these different factions who hated each other. And when I started singing that song, there was actually a stabbing that night in the
Mm.
in the audience, and it was like it was insane. And everyone came up to the stage together when Johnny Euclid was playing. Like all the gay guys, all the like super scary skinheads and the different factions of skinheads, and it was like, that's weird. That's the song that brings us all together. Like, how funny. I just thought that was hilarious.
I also saw another video, actually another interview that you had done, and the discussion was that because of the heat that was coming off that song, even though, I mean, wound up being a Valley Girl with Nicolas Cage. I mean, it wound up having some legs over a period of
Yeah,
time,
it
but
did.
but that the heat was a little bit too hot for Elektra Records,
Yeah.
and they chose to drop you from their label.
Mm,
What
yeah.
was their excuse for that?
Well, there had been like a turnover of CEOs, people, people, the A&R Pearson, they had 3 CEOs while I was there. And that always causes havoc. I was signed because Johnny Are You Queer was taking off, it was an international sensation. And so they loved that, but I don't think they realized the corporate backlash that was going to happen and whatnot. And so by the time I'd finished the second record with them, and it was all new people, and they didn't understand Johnny Are You Queer, and they were really annoyed that people were, because it was banned from radio. I mean, it was just an insane thing, and there were no records in the stores, and I don't know. But they seemed like incompetent to me. They didn't know what to do with it. They just dropped the ball. I mean, you get that much notoriety, and you can't like you have records in the stores. It was nutty. And so yeah, they didn't give me an explanation. No one even told me. It was my manager. Randy Phillips was my manager then. And perfect storm. And so and so he says, yeah, Josie, they dropped you. It was right before I was going to do my first acting job in a movie. And right before I went on, he goes, Electra dropped you. I was like, good timing, Randy. Thank you. And but they never, no one even bothered to say goodbye except one person in the marketing department, and he was a gentleman about it,
Yeah.
and so that was nice. But at that point, I had offers from IRS. I mean, I had different offers, but I was so turned off with the music business and being in the hands of strange people who really didn't get me, and I didn't think that they were very good at what they did. So I chose to not. It wasn't that I chose. It was like I would waves of nausea would overcome me once, and it would go, they want to sign you. Have a meeting, and I was like, "Roar." It was like, and I just went on another path. I had to really reinvent myself, and I was tired of being attacked as Josie Cotton, and so I just experiment. I just started an experimental career and it's been fun.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have this record now if I had had this stay Josie Cotton. Like,
Right. Did,
no.
I had heard a story about, and I don't know if it was Elektra, but I believe it was, and correct me if I'm wrong. And I find this to be just impossible to imagine that their suggestion to you to change your image was to pose naked in a photo spread. Is that true?
Yes, that's Penthouse. Yes, that is. I don't know. That's not a really known thing, but yes, they wanted me to do this layout, and that was right around the time when I got dropped because I said I didn't want to do that, and that's very coincidentally right when I was dropped because I said no, I said that's not me, and so that irritated them greatly. Yeah.
I think that the very suggestion would irritate you more. Because if you wanted to do that, you would have made that decision on your own, not because of them. What a ridiculous thing to suggest. You
I
do.
know.
It's
Yeah,
stupid.
I didn't feel safe. I just did not feel
Yeah.
safe there.
Uh,
And, that's funny you know that. I sometimes I forget that that happened, but that happened.
that's amazing to me that that would ever be suggested. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've done your homework, my goodness.
Listen, I spent this every time I do one of these interviews is like studying for the SATs. It's like I need a Stanley Kaplan course or whatever, but I try to do as much homework as I can. But
That's cool.
thank you, thank you. In studying up on you, one of the things that I think is so true, and I think it's great because I really appreciate this. So much of your music has a sense of humor, does have a real tongue in cheek sense to it, even when
Mhm.
you're dealing with serious topics or whatever it may be. There's always a twist that I think is a lot of artists are just afraid to show that they even have a sense of humor. But I think when you do it and it's effective, I think it's great to watch.
Thank you so much. It makes if it makes me laugh, even if no one else gets what I'm saying, then I can have my own secret little joke, like going on in the song. But a lot of people don't understand that I'm sneaking in very funny lines. I think they make me laugh, and even sad songs and whatnot. So yeah, that's it's I think has to do with my fear, my phobia, really, of being corny. And I just I don't like anything corny. It's when someone is just says things in such a way that it's just you just like diabetic coma comes to mind. I'm always trying to like couch things in a way, and also life is funny.
Yeah.
It's like moments, the darkest moments. Humor abounds, and if you don't notice it, I mean, there's something wrong with you, I think, like it's funny as shit,
Well, so many people take everything so damn seriously, and
Yeah,
it's hard to imagine that someone has the energy to be brooding and depressed all the time. That's a lot of work
it's
to
a
be that
lot of work.
miserable. Yeah.
It really is, and people are already, sad enough. I don't feel like it's my job to make people sadder. Like, why would I do that? We're all in trouble here. Like, damn.
You've got a lot of writing experience in your background, and comedy writing. You mentioned you did radio for a period of time. Tell me about that, about comedy writing, and what have you done, and what has drawn you to that?
Well, that was a purely accidental meeting of a girl who was so hilarious. She was spontaneous, comic. She was just hilarious, and I realized through her that I also had a love for humor. And in Texas, people are pretty funny. See, that's the thing people don't know about Texas. I'm always going from Dallas, like, but there's actually like a really keen sense of humor, and I took that to a good sense of the absurd. So that's even further out. But and so she wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and she was this really funny person. And so we just decided that we should have our own radio show, like, because we would come up with stuff. And she was more spontaneous. I was more the writer. I could write stuff out, but I was definitely the straight man, and she could just like we well, on one of our shows, it was the Cha Cha Nuva show, and the right after us were the Black Panthers. I mean, she was outrageous. She was just it's just like stuff that was just like, oh my God, we're gonna die. But and after it was over, and they came up and they were very serious, these guys, and and she came up to the guy and she said, "Nice tan," to this guy, this Black Panther guy. And he was looking at her and he just started cracking up. And it was like, I mean, it opened up my channels of perception. And in a way, it's like, okay, it's really good, to be tuned into that. My mom was very funny. And so I just realized I've always written poets like sad poetry and I can write funny things too. And so began in putting it in my music. It was like a year we had. I didn't go any further with that. I mean I was in I was an actress for a little bit, and I was in a science fiction movie with T-Bone Burnett of all people because I knew him in Dallas.
Oh, wow.
And so, that's just always been in the back of my mind. And comedic acting, I think that's so fun. I get to do it in my videos now and in writing. No, it's just like a lot of people don't think of me. They don't get my humor, but I appreciate you seeing
Oh,
that.
I definitely get it. And, as I'm watching the videos for the new album, I'm thinking anybody who does videos like this has to have an incredible sense of humor. Yeah, I mean, it's not self-effacing in any way, but it's really campy and out there, and it's really, really cool. It's so much fun to see.
Thank you.
Oh, no
Appreciate
problem.
it.
No problem. I was also going back and looking at some of the people that you've played with, musicians that it's like a who's who, everybody from Lindsey Buckingham to Prescott Niles, the Knack, Clem Burke from Blondie, Klaus Fluoride from Dead Kennedys, and obviously everyone in that lineup respects what you do and what you're all about. That's really cool.
Well, I also like I sang with Brian Wilson. I'm not Brian Wilson, uh, Brian Setzer.
Brian's no offense to Brian Setzer, but there's a big difference between him and
I
Brian Wilson.
know Brian Wilson. I idolize his songwriting and whatnot, but Brian Setzer is no small change. He's like brilliant person, and we did a song together on the third record I did that never came out. Like that was supposed to be on Elektra. It's called Everything's a Yeah. And we did a couple of songs on that record together. One's a rock, they're both rockabilly
Right.
songs, and so that was really fun. But yeah, I've had a chance to. It's just so funny though. I never, T-Bone and we talked about working together, and there's always ships passing in the night. And I don't know why that never happened, but that was just always a mystery, because we were like good friends and everything. And he disappears. I mean, he is a popular guy. I mean, it's just,
You
maybe someday like the day before I leave this earth or something. I
Yeah.
don't
Well,
know.
you could be produced by worse people. That's for damn sure.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
So is there any chance of you going on the road with this record, or what's the plan
Oh,
after it's
yeah.
released?
Well, Ray is helping me find a tour manager. I'm an odd bird in the sense that I have this whole history, and people who love the '80s, they want to hear that, and I get weary of doing '80s things. And the people are wonderful, and it's very gratifying when people are so happy. You're making them so happy, and but it doesn't necessarily make me happy. And I'm singing, 80 songs. It's like, oh God, so it's hard to get it. People don't know where to put me. Some people follow me through all my phases, and they love that. And then so it has to have a broad, swath of people. So it's a very tricky thing. I think Ray found me somebody though who's if it happens, it's going to be like it's a wild kind of ride here. So it's like a very special who is very used to like kind of the avant-garde-ish realm, which I tend to veer towards
Yeah.
all the time.
Well, it's like I said, Day of the Gun is a great, great album. It's so much fun, and it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Josie. I wish you all the best of luck with this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, take care.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The name of Josie Cotton's album is called Day of the Gun, and it is absolutely terrific and a whole hell of a lot of fun. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to rate it, like it, share it with all your friends. You can reach me on all the social medias or by emailing me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to know what you think. And thanks again for listening to Baxie's Musical Podcast.